Greetings. I'm Frankie Craig from ourpsychicart.com, and I welcome you to the Alchemy of Art, which is a series of wonderful conversations that I will be having with amazing creators from all around the world about how their creativity has become a part of their spiritual journey. So I invite you to join me for my next guest. My guest today is Jamie Green from Biomorphics.com, and I met Jamie, or I connected with him about 10 years ago through a mutual friend of ours, Celine Aswell. You may have seen her on my spiritual development series. If you haven't, go and look at Celine's work because she's a wonderful mutual friend that we have. Over the last 10 years, I've just been in awe of Jamie and his work and his creations, and just watching his creative journey unfolding. And I love his relationship with nature and how he incorporates so much of the natural world into everything that he creates. Not only that, I'm also really impressed with the quality of his workmanship, and the amount of skills that he has is just mind-blowing. So I'm so grateful for this opportunity, for Jamie's openness to come and share a little bit about his journey with us all here today. So welcome, Jamie.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an honor. It really is. I guess we'll just kick off by, finding out whereabouts are you located, and how are you filling your days at the moment?
Right now I live in Richmond, California, which is directly across the bay from San Francisco in the East Bay, Northern California, United States. As well as running Biomorphics, I also am a production assistant for Oaktown Spice Shop, where I help them with filling orders and shipping things for their website.
That's beautiful. And so you're sort of sharing your time between, is your studio at home?
Yeah. It's in my garage for my jewelry studio.
Yeah, same here. love garages so much. Well, I guess, for me, the moment that I kind of realized that I needed to really focus on my creativity more was when I was attending a college. It's like a mediumship college, like a little Hogwarts back in England. And it was so good for tapping into my mediumship. It was called Arthur Finlay College, for anyone who's wondering. But during that time there, I had a reading with a guy who had my grandfather come through, and my grandfather said, you need to start creating artwork based on the word freedom, and connecting with spirit. And I had never touched, any art material since I'd left school. I'd been in an office for 10, 15 years. So I was like, okay, I don't even know if I have any pencils laying around at home. But I started building the connection once I got back. And, one day, mainly because of the way health challenges and, I'd really opened myself up a lot. So it was hard to put myself back in an office environment. I thought, I'm getting so much growth out of every creation, even though they were just scribbles at the time. But I just made that choice to start really getting more wisdom from my creations, to really listen and make that process part of my everyday life. And I'm wondering if was there like a pivotal aha moment, or has this been something that has just organically grown and happened for you?
There's been a little bit of both to it, I would say. I've always been creative. Like, I grew up, I was a musician in high school. I was in several bands. on a tour in Europe with one of the bands I was in before. I also was a DJ and played a lot of electronic music parties, as well as being kind of like an amateur visual artist. I do drawings and, little sculptures and stuff like that. But maybe about 10 years ago, I ended up moving from Portland, Oregon down here to the Bay Area for my partner's job. And at that time, I had enrolled in school to study architecture, and it wasn't quite what I wanted to do. And actually someone at one of my classes was like, "Oh, did you know that here at the City College in San Francisco that we have jewelry classes?" And that was something I had always been interested in. And I had kind of a few type of revelatory spiritual experiences, so to speak. And one of them was that I actually had needed to make jewelry. But this was when I still lived in Portland. And when I looked into it there, I was like, well, this just won't like line up with my life. At the moment, it's a little too expensive to take the classes. So when I found out they had the class at the City College and I could get financial aid to go there rather than at like a private school, I was like, wow, this is what I have to do, And so while I was taking classes in college, I first made my Etsy, and it got way more popular than I thought it would. I'd been working a few kind of like crappy part-time jobs at the time, and I decided eventually that I should just focus my energy and attention on making my artwork, which has always had kind of a spiritual aspect to it between my focus on nature and also sacred geometry and meditation and yoga, So all of that kind of came together into my artwork, so to speak.
Yeah, completely. And yeah, I think obviously the sacred geometry part, there's so many things that you're into that speak to me. And I know that, my mandalas were inspired by my plant medicine experiences. I mean, I couldn't even draw a 3D cube before then. And I wasn't, one of my intentions I'd set with the plants was, I really want my artwork to help heal more people. And my first visuals, as they are for a lot of people, are these fractal geometric patterns. And, straight away I started getting these patterns so clear and could put them together like no problem whatsoever. But then like with nature, you just start, the more time you spend with it, the more you start seeing those patterns it's everywhere. The geometry's in everything. So
it's the fundamental building block of our reality, so to speak,
It absolutely is. And so tell me a little bit about the story behind Biomorphics. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
I honestly, the name was given to me by a friend of mine who was also another artist who works mostly as a lapidary artist, cutting and polishing stones for people to make in jewelry. But he suggested the name to me. I'm pretty much like all my names for my products are pretty descriptive too. So it really is just a descriptive name of like the sort of inspiration behind my work, I guess.
Right. It's beautiful, and you do have a website, and you're heavily on social media. You've got the Instagram, you've got the Facebook, you've got the TikTok. You are present, and I really encourage people to check out, especially his Etsy for some wonderful products. But also his social media is just so cool to watch because you really do share the process of what you're doing. I think that's it's just so impressive that you're, making all your own molds and casting a lot of your own stuff. And it's just, I don't see that often. So it's really cool to be able to see the process.
Yeah, it's not very common in the jewelry world for people to make all their own artwork, actually. Like it's usually people send off, especially with casting.
Yeah, and I found it with I work with resin a little bit, but making my own molds and casting them has been a whole new world as well for that. You know, it's so easy to get stuck in other people's molds and not necessarily create all your own. It's awesome.
Yeah, I've always been the type where if I want to make something, I want to make sure I'm making the whole thing, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's very important to me, not only just in terms of business stuff, but also spiritually to feel like I have that kind of control over the whole process, especially once again, to go back to casting, it's like alchemy, you know, you're taking something either like wax that you carve or something like a tree leaf, and you're transforming it into solid metal. And, you know, it's not like plated or coated at all. It's actually solid the whole way through, and you melt the metal and introduce it to the mold. So it's almost like a very ancient magical experience.
Yeah. There's definitely a science and putting a skill to it, and it's just so fun. And I think also because I know that you do your soaps and your beard oils and things like that, and I imagine that your process with them is something very similar. You know, the ingredients that you source, you know, is very important. It's all such an important part of the process of what you're creating, especially you know, making sure that your materials are ethically sourced and things like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's very important in all my work, not only with jewelry where I use all recycled and reclaimed materials, stones that friends and I have collected here throughout the West Coast and Western United States, native woods, scrap wood, reclaimed wood, and then also for soaps, I try to source local California olive oil, as well as different like native plant essential oils from the area and region.
Yeah, and I really love that about you as well, because it's important to me too. Is if I can keep it as close or as homemade as possible, then I will.
Yeah, that's super important in this day and age, especially with all the environmental problems that we have, to use materials that are not only reclaimed and recycled, but also sourced as locally as possible too.
Yeah, definitely. And we're being ethical with it and making sure that because even the ingredients on things, you know, aren't there's some fudges in there. So, you know, it's just doing your homework on the things that you invest in. So
it's definitely very important.
Yeah. So how are your biggest artistic influences?
I think the two biggest artistic influences for me, number one is nature, and especially native California plants and Pacific Northwestern plants are a big source of inspiration for me. Having grown up in the area, I'm like really influenced by them, and just like my experiences with having spent a lot of time in nature, you know. And then my other biggest influence is probably ancient artwork and from various cultures throughout the world too, such as like Native American art, art of India and South Asia, ancient European artwork as well, you know.
Completely. Oh God, we should be BFFs. Yeah, I mean, even when I'm looking for a color palette, you know, I'm looking into nature. You know, just one flower could give me enough various tones to create a whole palette. And also the platonic solids, the geometry and stuff like that, are also seeing that in all the different cultures, ancient artworks is just, it's so deep because it's been there for so long. And
it's like evidence of our interconnectedness. Like we have this idea that in the past people were separated and, you know, isolated and backwards, but that I don't believe that's actually the truth. I think we were a lot more connected throughout our past than we'd like to believe nowadays, like.
Yeah, I think or feel that our definition of the word primitive needs to be redefined.
I agree.
But yeah, so what else? What's your favorite medium to work with?
My favorite medium to work in is probably sterling silver. To go back to the materials thing, I source from a local refiner in the South Bay area that refines precious metals from old computers and circuit boards. So I think that's really cool. And also, I don't know, sterling is just such a nice metal to work in. Like in the metalsmith world, we joke about how it's soft like butter compared to other metals, so it's easier to work in.
Yeah, and I am a sterling girl, man. The tarnishes. I love copper for many, many reasons, but it's not a jewelry that I would necessarily wear. So I very much appreciate the sterling work for sure. And so, do you think how important is it to you? How important do you think art is to our society? Because it's not easy being an artist. There's you really got to up your game to be able to make it work in this world. But part of my motivation is, this is in my heart and soul, and it's what I want to do, and I don't want to be drummed down by culture and what it thinks I should be.
Well, yeah, I agree. Like, I think art is actually a fundamental part of being a human. People don't necessarily realize that, but it is really one of the defining features that like separates humanity from the rest of animals, so to speak. It's all throughout our ancient cultures. The rise of art is really one of the biggest things that propelled us into being the kind of beings that we are now, I think. So I think it's very important. I also think it's very healing, and it's something a lot of people could benefit from. I am actually interested in teaching art classes in the future, which is a different business idea that I have, to make like an art temple, so to speak, where I teach classes. So yeah, that's down the road. But also, I do think it's gotten a little bit easier to be an artist in our society with the rise of things like social media and the internet. It's no longer just limited to being the elite who can afford to go to university and then be able to show in galleries and so on. You can, it's a little more democratic nowadays, which is nice.
Yeah, and then with the companies like Redbubble and Society6, where you can get your like artworks printed onto products for you, and they're kind of dealing with that process for you, so you haven't got to bulk buy wholesale stuff. That's amazing for artists as well, for sure. But it's not just art, though, is it? There's the business side to it. There's the marketing. There's the the presence on the social media, just to get yourself out there. There's a lot of different aspects to making it as an artist, and so. One of my biggest things, I end up helping a lot of artists with the business side of stuff, because I've got more of a business background. It actually turned out to be a blessing for me, because it was a really good foundation. I think if I'd done it the other way around, because my creative side is so, I'm not sure I would have had that groundedness to, make a business out of it. So, yeah. So what do you feel like what kind of motivate how am I going to do I want to word that, but what I know that the redwood trees have been a big part of your journey. And so tell me a little bit about, like, when you're creating, are you like hearing messages and getting inspirations? Is there like a synchronicity between your outer world and what you're creating? I'm just wondering.
Well, yeah, a lot of my pieces are definitely influenced by different experiences that I've had, or just a certain feeling that I get. I get like I It's hard to exactly say. I don't necessarily get messages. Like, it's not like someone's telling me something. It's more like all of a sudden it's like, oh, here's this thing I've always known that's like coming to the surface,
Yeah.
or like a certain kind of emotion or feeling that, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
100%. I mean, there's not always, it's taken, and even now, it's, for me, it's more of a feeling, and a remembrance, like you said. And it's such a subtle voice. It's like it takes real stillness to be able to feel that voice. And it's not necessarily this loud guide coming through with clear instructions. It's these little intuitions and nudges and insights that we're getting along the way.
Oh, definitely. Like, I do agree with the synchronicity too. Like, that has been a big thing for me, especially.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had one example is I was doing a garden ornament of this giant ant. And this ant I put in my barn to start working on. And no kidding, all these ants started showing up everywhere. They're like on my computer desk, in my house. I had to get the pest control out twice because they were in my kitchen. But I mean, never had problems with them before or after, but all the time I was working on that project. But I was learning a lot about ants as I was working on that project, and I believe that it was them communicating with me what it's like to be an ant.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, that happens a lot with the different kind of plants for me. Like, they'll be like, all of a sudden it'll start showing up everywhere. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, cedar's a big one like that, and also redwood.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden it'll come up and people are talking about them. And I see dead redwood leaves in the empty mail bin at work when they drop a new one off, you know, like that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love that stuff. It tickles me. And yeah, it's just so much part of my process is just I kind of always take a breath before I start creating something, because I'm like, oof, what kind of ride are we going on now?
Yeah, it can definitely be like that.
And definitely with nature, you know, hearing it speak and allowing it to guide us. And it is amazing, because I did it was a course last year with Sacred Wild Woman, and it was working with mugwort on a 4-week journey. And one of the exercises that we were doing was just tuning into the subtle energies of a plant. And at the time, it was bee balm that I was just kind of sitting with. And it really tapped into my creativity. I all of a sudden started collecting the leaves and making this image, you know, printing the leaves, just a simple leaf print like you did when you were 4, you know.
Yeah.
But it was so beautiful, and what it was teaching me in that stillness and just tuning into its subtle energies, and how that tapped into my creativity so powerfully for me in that moment. And it is all these, like, it's so subtle. And I know that, you know, meditation for you is also a thing, as it is for me, not necessarily, you know, that I'm meditating for an hour every day, but it's inviting more of that present moment awareness into my moment to moment.
Yeah, well, for me, meditation is all about like reconnecting to my divine self, and the realization that, we are not separate from the divine, that everything truly is part of the great cosmic intelligence, so to speak. It's something people forget, but really it feels like everything in my life is like guiding me back towards that kind of non-dualistic mindset.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, I think we're right on the time, but this has been just, I feel like I could definitely talk to you for at least 2 more days.
Well, if you have any other questions, feel free to email me.
Definitely. And, I really appreciate you being here and just sharing some of it. I know this is just the tip of the iceberg, people. So if this has stirred you in any way, I really encourage you to support Jamie in his work in any way that you're able to, whether it's through making a wonderful ethical purchase or just connecting with him in social media and sharing your support by just giving a post a like or sharing it. You have no idea how much that helps guys like us. So, stay tuned for some more wonderful Alchemy of Art conversations. And once again, thank you, Jamie, for being here with us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing how this develops in the future too with other artists.
Yeah, I am so excited actually to just, I'm just open to, it's just going to be so interesting. It's just data collection really for me. It's just like, it's going to be so interesting just to see where each conversation goes, but it feels important to share what we're doing and to support each other and collaborate and network in all these ways that we can. So hopefully you and I will get to do more together in the future.